कैसे लड़े, चलिए समझते हैं. Keep to fearlessness. For it is a general rule of human nature that people despise those who treat them well and look up to those who make no concession. Thousands of years ago, our most primitive ancestors formed group of power and protection. But as the groups got larger, they encountered problem with human nature that plague us to this day. Individuals have different levels of talent, ambition, assertiveness. Their interests do not necessarily cover all on all points. When it comes to the important decisions upon which the fate of the tribe hang, a member will often think of their own narrow agenda. A group of humans is always on the verge of splintering into chaos of divergent interest. For this purpose, leaders were chosen to make the hard decisions and all the decisions. But the member of the tribe would inevitably feel ambivalence towards their leaders. They saw the necessity for them and respect that should pay to their authority. But they feared that their chieftains and kings would accumulate too much power and oppress them. They often wondered why this particular person or a family deserves such a lofty position. In many ancient culture, and king was ritually put to death after a few years to ensure he would not turn into an oppressor. In more advanced ancient civilization, there were constant rebellion against those in power, much more intense and numerous than anything we have known in the modern era. Of all the leaders in the ancient time who had to deal with such difficulties, none stand out more than Moses. He had been chosen by God to lead the Hebrews out of slavery in Egypt and to the promised land. Although the Hebrews suffered in Egypt, they had relative security. Moses arrested them from this predictable life and set them to wander for 40 years in the wilderness. They were, they were plagued by a lack of food, shelter, and basic comfort. They constantly doubted Moses and even came to hate him, some plotting to kill him as the king who needed to be sacrificed. They saw him as an oppressor or an madman. To aid this cause, God would perform regular miracles to show that Moses was chosen and blessed. But these miracles were quickly forgotten, and Hebrew kept resorting to their endless complaint and recalcitrance. To overcome the seemingly impossible obstacle in his path, Moses resorted to a unique solution. He united the 12 constantly divided tribes around a single simple cause, one God to worship and attainable goal of reaching the promised land. He was not there for power or glory, but merely to lead them to this much desired goal. Moses would not afford to absent himself for a day or two to ease up his leadership. The tribes were continuously prone to doubt him and forget the larger picture. The reason for their suffering, the Hebrew word for lead, meant to be out in front to drive. He had to be out there constantly in the vanguard, unifying them around his vision of the promised land. This meant being ruthless with internal dissenters, putting whole family to death, and stood in the way of the larger cause. In essence, Moses learned to play a role of the Hebrews, the man who is possessed of a vision from God, indomitable in the spirit and acting of the greater good. A normal tribe member would have to ask him or herself in this promised land was not something that excited merely in Moses' mind, but the force of his conviction and the determination to lead people to the promised land made it hard to doubt him. He had to play his role to convince them to top position was legitimate and sanctioned by God. His ability to lead such a fractious group of some 40 years had to be considered the greatest masterpiece of leadership in history. We modern believe we have moved far beyond our primitive tribal origins. After all, we live in a secular, rational world. A leader today needs to possess certain technical and managerial skills. But there are thousands of years of the civilizations have not altered human nature, and in the fact the endless difficulties that plague such leader as Moses have become only more acute. Whereas before we human might think fast of the tribe, we now think primarily of ourselves, our career, and our narrow interest Office politics is the extreme endpoint of this trait. We are now more distracted than ever, with thousands of bits of information competing of our attention in the course of the day. This makes us late patient and capable of seeing the larger picture. If we are being led out of slavery, we would not be able to focus on the promised land of more than a few minutes. We are much more skeptical when it comes to those in authority. We still feel the ancient ambivalence towards ruler. Instead of sacrificing them, we feed them to the press and secretly gloat in their downfall. To be leader now means overcoming these aspects of human nature while still seeming to be fair and decent, an almost impossible task. At the same time, however, people feel the division and selfishness and depressing phenomena. They desperately want to believe in a cause, to work for the greater good, to follow a leader who much imbued them with a sense of purpose. They are more than receptive to the kind of quasi religious leadership the Moses embodied. As on the top, you must rid yourself of your modern prejudice, your fetishism and of technical means. To be a leader still means that you are playing a role out in front, fearlessly driving the group of forward. If you fail to unify the group and some glorious cause and some equivalent of the promised land, then you will find that you are having to push and pull your own followers. You are constantly splitting up into factions. Instead, you must assume a prophetic air, and if you were merely chosen to lead them towards some higher goal, you are compelling them to follow on their own, making less of show of personal power and more of demonstration of the cause that unite them all. This will give you the proper authority to lead and an aura of power. To master the art of leadership, you must see yourself as playing certain parts that will impress your discipline, to make more likely to follow you with the necessary enthusiasm. The following are the four main rules you must learn to perform. By the beginning of the 20th century, Thomas Alva Edison was seen as America's prominent inventor and scientist. His research labs were the source of some of the most important technical breakthroughs of the time. But the truth is that Edison himself had only a few months of the formal education, as was not really a scientist at all. Instead, he was a mix of vision, strategist, shrewd businessman. His methods were simple. He secured the globe, looking at all of the latest advancement in the science and technology with his understanding of business and latest social trends. He thought long and hard about how some of those advances could be translated into products which great commercial appeal. Sorry. That could transform how people live. Electricity, lighting up cities, improve telephonic, altering the course of commerce, motion picture, entertaining the masses. He would then hire some best minds in the field to bring to the life of his ideas. Every product that came through his lab was inevitably stamped with Edison's particular vision and sense of marketing. Understand, a group of any size must have goal and long-term objective to function properly. But human nature serves as a great impediment to this. We are naturally consumed by immediate battles and problems. We find it very difficult, if not unnatural, to focus with any depth of the future. Thinking ahead requires a particular thought process that comes with practice. It means seeing something practical and achievable several years down the road and mapping out how this goal can be achieved. It means thinking in a branches, coming up with several paths to get there depending on the circumstances. It means being emotionally attached to this idea so that when a thousand distractions and interpretations seem to push you off course, you have the strength and purpose to keep it at it. Without one person on top who charts the way to the larger goal, the group will wander here and there, gapping at schemes for quick money and be moved by the narrow political aspirations of one member another. It will never accomplish anything great. You, the leader, are only a bulwark against this endless wandering. You must have the strength to stamp the group with your own personality and vision, giving it a core and an identity. If you lose sight of the larger picture, then only bad things will ensure. You must play this vision role with some dramatic flair, like Edison, who was consummate performer and promoter. He would give dazzling presentations of his ideas and stage events to get the front of page of the newspaper, like Moses describing the promised land. He could paint an alluring picture of the future that this invention would help create. This drew in money, and investors inspire these researchers to work and harder. Your level of excitement and self-belief with conviction, with that people you know where you are going and should be followed. Louis XIV began ruling France 1661. He inherited an almost impossible situation. The feudal dukes and lords of the France maintained tight control over their various realms. Recent ministers such as Duke de Richelieu and Cardinal Mazarin had made most of the important decisions that lay outside the control of the lord. The king had been mostly a figurehead presiding over deeply fractured country whose power in Europe had been in the decline of the quiet time. Louis was determined to reveal all of this kind, and his methods was powerful and dramatic. At first, he kept his intention to the self, and then suddenly he announced to one and all he could not have appointed a minister to run the country. From now on, he would be his task. Next, he ordered aristocracy to take up residency in the place of the Versailles that he had recently constructed. The closer they lived to this in palace, the more affluent they would have. And if they are maintained in their ditches to conspire against him, they would find themselves isolated from the new center of the power he had created. His most brilliant maneuver, however, was the most subtle one of all. He created a cause of the French people to believe in greatness of the glory of the France, and which he had its mission to be the center of civilization and refinement, the model for all Europe. For this purpose, he led a country into the various wars to extend France's political might. He became the preeminent patron of the art, making France culture envy of the Europe. He created impressive spectacles to delight and distract the public from this power. Nobility were not fighting for the Louis but for the greatness of the nation. In this way, he transformed a deeply divided, almost chaotic country into the supreme power of Europe. Understand, the natural dynamic of any group is to splinters into fiction. People want to protect and promote their narrow interests, so they from political alliance from within. If you force them to unite under your leadership, stamping out their fractions, you may take control, but it will come with great resentment. They will naturally suspect you are increasing your power at their expense. If you do nothing, you will find yourself surrounded by lords and dukes who will make your job impossible. A group needs a centripetal force to give it unity and cohesion, but this is not enough to have that you and the force of your personality. Instead, it should be cause that you fearlessly embody. This could be political, ethical, or progressive. You are working to improve the lives of the people in your community, for instance. This cause elevate your group above others. It is a quasi-religious aura and a kind of cult feeling. Now, to fight or doubt you within is a stand against this cause and seems selfish. The group infused with this belief system will tend to polite itself and root out troublemakers. To play this role effectively, you must be living examples of this cause, much as Louis exemplified the civilizing power of France in his own carefully crafted behavior. The role model. You cannot control a large group on your own. You will turn into a micromanager or dictator, making yourself exhausted and hated. You need to develop a team of lieutenants who are infused with your ideas, your spirit, and your values. Once you have such a team, you can give them latitude to operate on their own, learning for themselves and bringing their own creativity to the cause. This is a system that Napoleon Bonaparte initiated, and he has since been imitated by the greatest general of the modern era. He would give a field marshal a clear sense of goal for the particular campaign or battle, and who has become as the mission statement. They were then empowered to reach those goals on their own, in their own way. All that mattered were the result. The idea behind it is that those who are fighting on the ground often have a better sense of what need to be done in here and now. They have more information to their fingerprint than the leader. With a degree of trust in their decision, they can operate fast and feel more engaged in the execution of the war. This revolutionary system allowed Napoleon army to move with greater speed and cultivate a team of highly experienced and brilliant field marshals, and took a greater courage on his part to trust them and not try to control everything on the battlefield. Operating with a mission statement is an effective way of softening your image and disguising the extent of your power. You are seen as more than just a leader. You are a role model, instructing, energizing, and inspiring your lieutenant. In crafting this team, look for people who share your values and are open to learn. Do not be seduced by a glittering resume. You want them near you to observe your spirit and ways of doing things. Once you feel that they have the proper training, you must not be afraid to let go of reins and give them more independence. In this end, this will save your much energy and allow you to continue focusing on the greater strategic picture. The bold knight. Every group has a knight of collective energy, and on its own, this will tend towards inertia. This comes from the people powerful desire to keep things comfortable, easy, and familiar. Over time, in any group, conventions and protocol will assume greater importance and give people behavior. The larger the group, the more conservative it all will end to become, and the greater this force of inertia. The paradox is that the defensive passive pressure has a depressing effect of moral, and like sitting in one place for too long will lower your spirit. Moreover, then likely to rise to the top by virtue of your boldness and this desperate desire to get ahead. You look risk that made you rise to occasion with all your energy and creativity, and this fearless spirit attracted positive attention. The group inertia will naturally tend to ramp all of that down and neutralize the source of your power. Since you are the leader, you are the one who can alter this and set space and is more alive and active. You reign bold and enterprising knight. You force yourself to initiate new project and domain to conquer. You take proactive measures against possible danger on the horizon. You seize the initiative against your rival. You keep your group marching and on the offensive. This will excite them and give them a feeling of the moment. You are not taking unnecessary risk but simply adding a dash of degradation to your normally staid group. They become used to seeing you out in front and grow addicted to the excitement you bring with each new campaign. Reversal of perspective. We live in the time of great mistrust of any form of authority. Some of this spring from envy of those who have power and have achieved something. Some of it comes from experience with the people who abuse their a position of power to get their way. In any event, such distrust make it harder and harder to be strong and effective leader. Under the way of this leveling force, you yourself might be tempted to act like less authority, to be more like everyone and make yourself likable. This will only make your job that matter harder. Instead, it is better that you see the whole concept of authority in a different light. The word authority comes from Latin root autore, meaning author, a person who creates something new. This could be a work of art, a new way of operating in the world, a new value. The health of any society depends on those who infuse it with such innovation. These works or actions and individuals give them credibility and authority to do more. The great Roman general Scipio Africanus, the elder, invented a whole new style of warfare in the campaign against Hannibal that was tremendously successful. This gave him the authority to lead the campaign itself and later to launch a political career. For the Romans, if you simply act as if your position entitled you are to certain power, you lost your authority. You are no longer an author, a contributor, but a passive consumer of the power. As a leader, this is how you must give your view yourself as well. You are an author, creating a new order, writing in a new act of some drama. You never rest on your laurels and past achievements. Instead, you are constantly taking action and moves the group towards and bringing position results. That record spread of itself. Despite the spirit of the time, people have a secret yearning to guide by the firm and someone who knows where they are going. It is distressful to always feel distracted and wandering. The member of your group will give you the respect and authority you require if you earn it and author and create. In the end, if people mistrust and resist your authority, you really have only yourself to blame. A distinguished commander without boldness is unthinkable. No man who is not bold can play such a role, and therefore we consider this quality the first requisite of the great military leader. How much of this quality remains by the time he reaches senior rank after training and experience have affected and modified it? It is another question. The greater the extent to which it is retained, the greater the range of his genius. Know your environment from the inside out connection. Now, in this section, we will be reading certain very good books, and you just have to listen, because maybe out of any story, it might click you for your inspiration and your life could be changed. So continue, try to attend my live streaming. It would be really very helpful for you. Thank you so much, because I'm reading out those very significant and powerful books, and I'm making things easy for you. Just give few minutes and it is going to help you a lot. Thank you so much.